Hey everyone, welcome to the Grind. We're on week 2 of this series studying the book of Malachi. It's a short book, and so we want to encourage you, if you haven't yet done so, to read the book. And I'm believing that God will speak to each and every one of us, in His own way as we study this short book. And so, last week we were talking about guarding our relationship with God with honor and fear, and this week we're going to be talking about guarding your relationship with your spouse or / future spouse. But here's a question for all of us today, just to kickstart today's conversation: is what's the most precious thing you own right now, and how do you guard it?
Well, besides saying God, family, and friends,
yeah,
I'd say it's my camera.
On camera, how do you guard it, sir?
I have this camera bag, which I literally call the brick, because it really is a brick. It's hard, like it protects it really well, and it rarely leaves my body if I'm on the go.
Oh, okay.
I cherish it with my life. Seeing that it's my whole work and career.
That's an important one.
That's your livelihood right there.
Exactly.
I don't know. I think for me, just quite standard, my laptop. And I don't really do anything in particular to protect it, to be honest. So now thinking about it, I should probably buy a bag for it or something.
Buy a bag, buy a case, buy insurance.
Yeah.
I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is my Bible.
Right. You should add that.
Yeah.
God, family, friends, the Bible.
Well, just because, side note, I've been trying to find someone to rebind my Bible because my Bible is falling apart. And then so the covers are kind of like jank. It's like the fake leather kind. And I finally found someone to rebind my Bible. So I'm pretty excited how it's going to look. So it's still in the making, and very, very excited for that.
Exciting stuff.
Very excited to see how she's going to make my old Bible look not old anymore. But besides that, I think one of the precious things I own is probably the birthday cards that my mom made. Because every year growing up, she would make us birthday cards. And she's pretty artistic. Like, she made my brother a Batman birthday card. Like, that's really cool. The old school Batman. Like, even I don't know. It was just really creative. So yeah, that's probably some of the most precious things that I own. And I put it in a box, in my cabinet. You know how there's always that question if your house is on fire, what's the first thing that you run? I was like, that box would be one of it. But actually, it's also real now because with the whole thing with the LA fires.
Yeah, that's actually so tragic.
Yeah. It is very tragic. Because I have a Facebook friend that he's been posting up updates because his house got burned down.
Wow.
And so it's just I think it's just going through the trauma. He's got 2 young children, and kind of explaining to them how hey, we don't have home anymore, and that kind. I mean, he's also a photographer too, so it's I think it's rough. You see stories of how people were saved. Houses were saved, people who's not saved, and then you have your celebrities who, it's okay, but you have a couple $1 million in the bank.
You'll be fine.
You'll be fine.
You'll be fine.
But then also it's again keepsakes, for some of these people. So yeah, you never know that moment when.
It's strange because I feel like the modern generation or modern society isn't really used to seeing catastrophe at this scale and at this speed where over one night you've literally lose everything that you've owned, everything, all your memories, your home, and it's not even just one home, it's the entire community is leveled. I think that's pretty mental.
Yeah, and so that's something that's tangible, that can just be gone in just a second, right? And
it really felt apocalyptic and almost like what the Bible says on what do you build your foundation on, what your life is built on, and I don't know, it felt very eerie and and so I mean, there's only so much you can safeguard your items in a fire and everything, right? So now today we're talking about our relationship with I guess, now future spouse, whatever it is, right? With God, right? So how do we safeguard our relationship with God with honor and, and fear, having fear of the Lord. And, we're talking about our future spouse. I mean, all of us here, we're not married. So in a sense. We're all singles here.
Yeah. And so and I know the past sermon was, he was talking
like about advice for the married people, he's also like talking about like advice for singles too, and how we navigate this. And I know like oftentimes at church there's always like stuff for the married people, like how to safeguard your marriage, how to do this and how to do that, whereas with the single people it's kind of like, oh, not as much help maybe. So and I feel like, you know, with this message that we heard over the weekend, I guess it provided some principles that we can guide by, but I know, like, again, very real like issues for us, right? So yeah, let's get to kind of like just talking a little bit more about it. So one of the passages that was mentioned was Malachi. We're going to look at chapter 2, and we're going to look at 2 verses 10 to 11. Have we not all one Father? Has not one God created us? Why then are we faithless to one another, profaning the covenant of our fathers? Judah has been faithless, and abomination has been committed in Israel and in Jerusalem. For Judah has profaned the sanctuary of the Lord, which he loves, and has married the daughter of a foreign god. So yeah, I mean, from the verses we see that, you know, the covenant was profaned, like Judah profaned the covenant because like he married a daughter of a foreign god. Not saying that, like, you know, interracial marriages aren't supported, is basically the fact is interfaith is not supported. So basically, let's talk about this. Like, who you marry is a spiritual decision which affects your walk with God. Yeah, so what are your thoughts?
I feel like I'm gonna assume that we were all on this stage at one point where we all had like our own requirements. Like, oh, my future spouse has to be this, has to love this, da 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 da. But I feel as we matured, we started seeing how not important it is, and we were dropping a lot of requirements. I think that's kind of how I was seeing this, and yeah, like two requirements that I've dropped that I thought were really important to me. There was a time where I said, oh, I need, right? I made a really adamant requirement that they need to love missions and they need to love ministry, because I feel called there and I love it. And so if my future spouse doesn't love missions and I want to go missions, I see that as a dilemma. And so that's why I was really hard settled on that. But then God kind of like convicted me, saying that's actually wrong. But my only requirement on top that trumps both of those is that they're obedient to God. Because if they're obedient to God and God calls them to missions, they will obey. Yeah. Right? So I think in that, for example, in that case, having them, I need them to love missions and ministry was not even correct. So I think that's like how I understand it, with how it really affects your walk with God, based off like having the right requirements, I think.
Yeah, I think there's so many things that influence your walk with God, especially if you are with a believer versus a non-believer. I think just having someone around that supports you, and whether it's through attending church, prayer, morning prayer or evening prayers together, someone you can share worship music with, and someone that can really see that journey, that walk with Jesus, share that journey with you. And I think even when you sometimes get weird dreams or strange things happening in your life, just to have someone to share that with, and someone that maybe can help interpret with you, instead of you feel like you're in the dark a little. I feel like when your values are very different, and when your lifestyle habits are very different, and also the direction you want to walk in is quite different, it's almost as though one person has a blindfold on and the other person can see, and you're walking through a maze. So the person that can see insists on walking the way that they want to walk, and the person that feels like they cannot see has to totally trust this person. And so that's what I think.
Like, I mean, I'm sure all of us here have friends who, you know, are believers who marry non-believers. And you know, when I observe their relationships, like, you know, some of them seem as though they're still walking with God, but then I think a lot of them also feel as though they I mean, yeah, I think they'll still call themselves Christians, but they don't necessarily look as though that they're like, serving at church or, like, I mean, I never got to a conversation like, oh, how is your walk with God, right? But, on the outside, it doesn't seem as though, like they're really plugged into church. And one thing that Pastor had said that when you marry a non-believer, it's very rarely that it's spiritual. But then obviously, like, then it boils down to like the struggle, like it's like, yeah, but but then also it's like, what if like through marriage that they come to Jesus? I don't know. And then you hear Pastor talk about like, if they come to Jesus, it's the kindness of God. I mean, there are situations where people date a non-believer and in the end they become Christian, right? But is that like fire that we want to play with?
I definitely think it's possible for like a guy or a girl, if you're a Christian, to meet someone that's not, and over time, over the course of a life, they change, and they decide they want a relationship with Jesus as well, which is amazing. But I think that also is like in the details of the relationship, dependent on your personality and what type of person you are, can you cope with that? Do you have the patience for that? Do you have the capacity to deal with all the emotional things that comes with it?
My dad, when he dated my mom wasn't a Christian. And he's the one that brought her to church, but technically he wasn't the one that really talked to her about church, So I mean, I don't think there's anyone that told me, like, oh, don't date a non-Christian, right? But if my dad said, like, oh, if she wasn't going to be a Christian, I was going to split up with her. I was like, all right, dude, sure.
Sure.
But I mean, I don't know, right? But maybe my dad would have actually split up with her. But the thing is that at the end of the day, she came to the Lord. And if anything, she was, the one who was like, I guess more into the word and more about like, bringing the family together in prayer and everything. Like her fire seemed to be outshining his in a way at some point. I mean, but my dad like obviously, loves the Lord in his own way, even though, like it may not like look like, super, like fiery outside, but he loved the Lord in his own way. And so it's like, yeah, you have that story happening. So let's just say if my dad really split with my mom, if she didn't become Christian, this person isn't gonna be here. It's like, I think God's kindness, God can work through things, but it's also like, but bottom line is it's important to not be yoked with unbelievers, and that's how like Judah profaned the covenant. But I'm gonna be real though, like, it's easier for guys to find girls at church than for girls to find guys at church. Let's be straight up with that.
Yeah, I don't know. In Hong Kong specifically.
Well, I feel like,
generally in this age.
Yeah, I'm just gonna be straight up. Like, I feel like there are more good Christian, like there are more Christian guys than there are Christian women in the church. So
there are more Christian girls.
Yeah, there are more Christian. Yeah. Sorry, no, there are more Christian women than Christian guys in the church. And so for Christian guys to find women, it's like easy, like sorted.
You think so, but sometimes it's not that easy as well. What do you think, Tom?
I only have one relationship of experience, so I don't know. I think my opinion is pretty skewed.
No, but in general, like you can see that.
But yeah, true. From a probability standpoint.
From a probability standpoint, it is far easier for a guy to get a girl within church than for a girl to get a guy within church, because obviously ratio is skewed, right?
What if we did a Christian speed dating thing, interchurch thing?
That could also work too. Still, no.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That would be interesting.
Every Thursday night.
Every Thursday night,
Tuesday
get all
nights.
the single girls and single guys to come out. Because like
I think it'd be very popular.
I think people actually, you might get some, really strange ones though, but.
That's part of the fun.
Oh my goodness.
Like I know, so there not many, like I said, there's not as many guys out there for the women. So maybe flip to convert is a very real thing that we need to resort to for the single women. And then there's always like trusting God's timing and everything, better to break the heart of yourself and, or whatever than to be yoked with like an unbeliever. And I know like
easy to say on paper, and I know Pastor was like, like his heart is like, of compassion, but definitely I think something that singles not would struggle with.
Yeah.
Like, yes, waiting for the Lord, but also it's like, but he's so good or she's so good,
Yeah.
but she's not a believer. So
It's such it's risk.
yeah,
It's foresight versus hindsight, where
yeah,
do you want to risk cutting off someone because they're not Christian, even though they seem perfect for you
Yeah.
and you guys get along so well,
yeah,
but they're not Christian, so you cut them off, and then now you run the risk of just being single,
Yeah.
or like that's not out of the cards,
Yeah.
just being single.
yeah.
So that's one risk, and the other risk is, are you gonna find someone that you're that close to, even if they're a Christian?
yeah,
There's a lot of uncertainty there. I don't know. It's in practicality, it's actually not as simply
yeah.
said as that, I think.
Like, I'm sure when we get married and we look back, it's like, oh yes, it was right to wait for the one, and but then right now it's like, oh God, it's hard.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
True.
And-
That's the hindsight.
yeah, that's a hindsight. That's
Yeah.
why hindsight's always 20/20. So so it's like the whole thing of like marry people only in the Lord. Then when we marry, like,
I think there's some wisdom there.
Oh,
As
yeah.
in, marriage is not like dating, where dating is about love and chemistry.
Yeah.
Marriage is more about being a team and getting through life as a team day to day.
Yeah.
It's not going to be rainbows and butterflies every single day,
Yeah.
but on the days where you don't get along, having a value system, belief system, and almost like all the activities and the routine you do is so similar,
Yeah.
you guys align better than
Yeah.
if one person's going clubbing and partying
Oh,
and the
yeah,
other
yeah.
person's going to church on Sundays and
Yeah.
Saturdays. You start to get fed up after
Yeah.
a few months.
I mean,
if
let's
that
be
was
real though. I
happening.
don't think I'll ever date someone who goes clubbing every weekend,
Yeah, I
either
know,
Christian or
that's
non-Christian.
That's quite far, but
Yeah. Like, I mean, something that Pastor Ed said that was really interesting that also like threw me off is that, the Bible never says to marry the person you love, but commands you to love the person you marry.
yeah,
What are your
that
thoughts
one
on that?
Really just...
It's basically like framing marriage as a faith decision rather than an emotional one. But yeah, what are your thoughts
I
on
don't
that?
know. I'm quite an emotional guy, so I don't know about that, I know there's wisdom there, but it's difficult for me to accept that
Yeah.
so quickly. What about you guys?
I mean, I think I've asked you this question. I always like getting other Christians' views on like would they date non-Christian,
Uh-huh.
and then I always bring up the unequally yoked verse,
Yeah.
right? But I think I actually, I don't know. Maybe I'm not. I might be in the wrong for this. I don't know. But sometimes I like to overanalyze that verse. That it's not restricted to just Christian and non-Christian when it talks about unequally yoked. Because I take it up another level of saying like, just because they're Christian doesn't make
Yeah.
them like viable for me. Like I
Yeah.
need them to be on the same level as faith as me. Because like, let's say hypothetically, if I do start dating like a Christian, but they're like a young Christian, the moment I want to start talking about like the prophetic words, tongues, it might scare them, right? And so that's why, yeah, the verse, iron sharpens iron, right? If you're iron and they're like what, aluminum, you're not gonna sharpen yourself. Two, you're probably gonna hurt them even more, right?
Sure.
And so I think that was one of the things I always think about. And so yeah, is it like challenging to find someone who really follows God's timing and plan? I think yeah. Like I always say, I wonder if I'm shooting myself in the foot because
Yeah.
here I am, a guy in Hong Kong who only speaks English. So of the girls who speak English is very small. Of this portion of English speaking, how many of them are Christians is even smaller. And how many of these Christian English speaking girls are like strong in faith as me? It's like even smaller. So I'm like, I don't know, am I being too picky? Am I just making it difficult for myself? But at the same
Yeah.
time, that kind of is what I'd say one of my requirements, as I said earlier, you know.
Yeah, someone said
It's
like
tricky.
oh, it's better to be single than to be stuck in a relationship for the rest of your life. That is, like I guess that will cause you pain, and so it's like also part of me is like thinking like, oh, but like. I mean, obviously, the one part of me is like, oh, but then at least you're not alone, even though this person is gonna. But then also like, do I want to be stuck with pain for the rest of my life? I hate pain, And I almost, even though I'm not like a super emotional person, but I am emotional enough.
Yeah.
So like, because I guess when you grow up with like Disney stories and everything and fairy tales and like, you know, teenage dramas and everything, it's like, yes, like I was just watching a Friends episode the other day. It's like, oh, they're lobsters, like, you know, where it's like you're mate for life, that kind of thing. So it's like that's the whole idea of like love, right? And I mean, I don't know. I probably don't believe in love at first sight. Don't think I do. But I would think that like the person I end up with is the person that I do love and have chemistry with, right? Like in marriage for the rest of my life, as opposed to like being like stuck with someone and then it's like, oh, then love that person. But then also like then there's that whole talk of like arranged marriages. Like these people, they don't know each other and then they eventually learn to love each other. So that's also like a beauty in itself too. So I'm like thinking like maybe arranged marriages will be just so much easier. I don't know how to deal with this.
Yeah, I know, right? That's true.
But yeah, it's interesting to see it that
But
it's...
if it's arranged and when you meet them the first few times and you really, really not your cup of tea, that's going to be a struggle too.
Yeah. Because like, I mean, I don't know about your grandparents, but I think my grandparents, they're all arranged marriages.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think my grandma was like 20 years junior my granddad. Yeah, I'm not sure about my dad's side, but mom's side, yeah. So, but I don't know.
They seem to be fine, right?
I don't know. I've never saw the interaction between them, but they had 9 kids in total on the left side. I'm sorry, on my mom's side of the family. So, yeah, so I think it's just interesting. Like the Bible never says to marry the person that you love, but commands you to love the person you marry. And I think that's something.
There's a lot of, there's a lot implied there.
Yeah.
Relationship is not just feelings based, emotions based.
Yeah. Even though we are like, what's the phrase? Emotions may be valid, but it's not the truth. So.
And I get a sense from that statement that love is not something that is like love at first sight.
Yeah.
It's the active love where every single day you're working to love someone, which makes it feel so real.
Yeah.
And kind of takes away from the beauty of what love is. It makes it less romantic and it brings it back down to earth.
Yeah.
I guess that's why I feel like it's difficult to swallow because as a Disney guy, you feel like everything should be really magical and very romantic. And in our generation right now, we have a tendency to romanticize everything that we do, our routines and our relationships. So for it to be sterilized in that way, it feels very real.
Yeah, like the head knows only marry the Lord. The heart knows that it's a good thing and believes that it's the correct way to go and wants to honor the Lord and, you know, have the fear of the Lord. But then sometimes the head and the heart struggles to connect. And then, feelings and emotions get in the way. So definitely a struggle and definitely a challenge, you know, seeking a partner who shares our faith and then also trusting in the Lord's timing.
Because as well, the heart wants what the heart wants.
Yeah.
It doesn't want what it needs, you know?
True.
So what I mean by that is a lot of people in this world would pick someone that they would love to be with and struggle for 5 decades with them instead of someone that they don't even want and then have a beautiful life with them.
Yeah. So, it's just like...
Right? So it's tricky.
Yeah.
It's really tricky.
Like, talking about like interfaith, right? I knew someone who, like he was full out Christian, and but then he always had the desire to like be in a relationship with someone, and he ended up meeting someone who was of the opposite faith, like, and in the end, like he like switched to her religion, and is practicing a religion, and it's just, it can also affect the people around him as well, because like he used to be such a prominent figure in, like, you know, in leadership, and now it's just like he just gave all that up for a woman. I mean, they on the outside looks happy, I guess has the picture perfect, like, you know, like life of, like, you know, family, kid and everything, but is that pleasing to the Lord? Like, well, I don't know. Well, when he stands before the Lord, like, what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So And I think that broke God's heart to see someone who's so on fire for him now, like so far away from him, pursuing like what the world says is ideal and what the world says is good, as opposed to like following after him and trusting in his timing. So
I think what you said just now, what the world thinks is good, is should be in bold and highlighted. I think relationships don't represent just relationships in this modern age. There's something there that people don't talk about. We all acknowledge, but we don't talk about. There's something in this generation. I think relationships also a bit of a status thing. You know, it's a bit of a identity thing. If I'm with someone like this, I look better, or I feel like my identity's better. But the truth is, what God is really saying is that your identity should be in Him. You should care about what God cares about more than what man cares about.
Yeah, like
It's this imagery with the yoke. It is about the concept of submission and faith and servitude, right? So.
And then also like within church, we also kind of like push the whole ideal of getting married, like, oh, marriage is good, God, you know, and so on and so forth. Like, what about the single people? What if the people who can't find people, right? Like, and then actually someone once mentioned to me, he's like, oh, let's hope that you get married by 35, and after 35, that's it, you know, oh, there's no more hope, that kind of deal. And I was like, great, past 35 now, guess there's no more hope for me. But then, you know, I think one thing that's also reassuring to what Pastor had said on Sunday is that there is no like age limit to when to get married. And I think, again, the world tells you like, oh, it would be better to get married in your late 20s or like mid 20s or early 20s, you know, have that partner sort for life, that kind of deal. And then I guess not so important for guys, but for women, it's like, oh, better get married before your eggs like decides to die and your body can't take it anymore, right? And I'm very clearly aware that I'm at an age right now where I will probably have a lot fewer eggs in my system than when I was younger. So the possibility of bearing children could be not as high. The possibility of recovering from childbirth also not as high. Actually, maybe at the end of the day, maybe I'm actually infertile. I don't know, you know, all these things. So it's like, yeah, like society tells you like, oh, TikTok, you know, like girls, you better, you know, get on that train real quick. And then, yeah, that's why you're just like, okay, well then, yeah, at first like, yeah, sure, all these, you know, guys are there. And then suddenly it's like, oh, maybe just anyone will do because, you know, the biological clock is clicking. But yeah, I think it's just, again, if we go back, it's like, yes, marry only the Lord, trust in the Lord. Not gonna lie, this is a struggle.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think this is probably one of the things I struggle with the most in the Bible, actually. Everything else I kind of very, very clearly agree. I totally see the wisdom there. I see the wisdom here, but it's quite difficult to apply in daily life, I think, this one. So it's humbling.
Yeah, it is. It is a struggle, and I wouldn't say it's gonna get anytime easier soon, but like,
yeah, this is the hardest thing in the Bible for me, I think.
So going back to Malachi, it talks about the Israelites marrying foreign wives and turning away from God. And I mentioned that's what happened with at least one person I know. So I would say that how can we embrace the season of singleness as a time of preparation and growth?
I think when we're single, it's like you're having personal time and a time to date God almost. Where you're not needed anywhere, there's no expectations on you, you have your own schedule, you have your own itinerary, and you can really set up little dates with God. Whereas when you start dating, you already have a lot more responsibility and obligations to your partner, which is gonna, without a doubt, take time out of your schedule. So should cherish.
I really like what you said about like date with God, because I think I only have one relationship of experience. I feel I was single for a very long time, and I think that was one of the things I've always asked God, why, right? And I think the conclusion I came to was that I wasn't really prepared, and that if I forced a relationship, I would have actually just harmed the girl. So, which is why I like the idea of this date with God, because, you know, when you date someone, your flaws begin to flush out, right? And so then this is what I like about date with God when you're single, because he in doing this process with him, he doesn't get hurt, but and all your flaws are getting flushed out, and it gives you like so much time and so much like perhaps like resources for you to fix yourself before you actually go out and be with someone. Because if you force it, you're gonna hurt either one party or both, right? And so that's why having this exercise of God and He's slowly revealing more about you is just such like a, I don't know, it's such a good investment to start off of. And yeah, like I said, like as we mature, we drop requirements. I think that was kind of the things that would hinder, is that when I put these requirements over what God wants for me, right? That again, like the clubbing, like what if I would like a girl who knows how to have fun, right? Then of course, like clubbing could be a main priority, and I might put that above like them loving God, like them loving going out is higher than loving God, right? And I think having those kind of requirements are the modern day distractions, I'd say.
Yeah. Like, but you also don't want to lose all your requirements, but like, okay, and just anyone will do, you know?
No.
Then it's like, okay, oh no, you're just a female, okay, let's go, right? And I think it's definitely one of the one of the deal breakers for me is like, if this guy has a relationship or not with God. No relationship, then I'm sorry, I'm not even going to entertain.
Yeah, like just to clarify, right? Not disregard our requirements. That your requirements are secondary when primary is.
The primary is whether your primary is to love God and to honor God and to know Him and make Him known. I guess the YM slogan. And I think for me, like I want to be the best version of myself as well for like future spouse, right? And so hence the continual work. Like I don't want like my future spouse to end up with a insecure person who doesn't know her worth. Then that's just gonna be. I'm going to be finding my worth in the person and in God. So if I'm a person that finds my worth in God, then let's just say things, go south with the guy, then I know that, hey, my worth doesn't come from the fact that whether or not the guy accepted me, but whether or not God accepts me. Now, and most importantly, the person that I end up with needs to have a relationship with the Lord, needs to have the fear of the Lord, right? If he has no fear of the Lord, he does not revere the Lord, then I think, let's just say, maybe, that's something that he can grow in. But then in the end of the day, if he's not going to grow in that, then that's going to hurt me overall. So, I think in the meantime, it's like, yes, how do I prepare in this time of singleness and everything? It's like, how can I continue to grow in the Lord? How can I continue to, practice the fear of the Lord? I mean, something I was reading in Psalm today was that, fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and those who practice it will understand it, right? So, it's like, how do I do that? As you practice having the fear of the Lord, then you understand the importance of it and what it means to be, yoked with someone who does have that too. And yes, the heart wants what heart wants, and in moments of weakness, like, oh, but Lord, this guy's just so good. Let me just go with him. It's just so much easier, right? But it's to know, like, there is, like, again, societal timelines that might be like, you need to get married this time, you need to have kids at this time. And yes, I mean, I've heard stories of women having kids, in early 40s. Lord, maybe let that be so for me, but is again trusting the Lord's timing and honoring God, and God will honor your heart. That's what I'm thinking. So yes, it's a challenge to connect the mind and the heart, but let's just trust that God always has our best intentions at heart. Well, that's stuff today. I know, tough conversation, tough topic for singles, and I just want to know that if you're single, know that you're not alone in this journey. God's got your back. Thanks for joining us, and we will catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.